Want to know one of my favorite genres of games? It's choice-based, story-driven games. I grew up liking these games from a young age, probably because I love those Twisted Journey books growing up. Something about making decisions and choosing my own path is just very intriguing to me. With that being said, I've played plenty of these games. Some of them are good, some of them are bad, some of them are literally among my favorite games of all time. But when I start to think about the whole choice-based subgenre of video games as a whole, I keep on coming back to one game. Telltales The Walking Dead Season 1. A choice-based story-driven game that was one of the first and best of its kind. And while the Telltale games are often scrutinized in a negative light, what Season 1 of Telltale's Walking Dead and how it changed an entire subgenre should not be forgotten. So today, let's talk about it. How The Walking Dead Season 1 laid the foundation for future developers. Before we get started, let me say a few things. This video will contain complete spoilers. I obviously have some good things to say about it, and specifically its narrative, so in the off chance that you haven't played it, then play it right now. It's a decade old, so it should be cheap, and I promise it's worth it. With that being said, let's get started. Before we delve into the game, I think it's important to describe what the gaming scene was like back in 2012. You see, the choice-based subgenre back then wasn't doing too great, with the only game of relevance being Heavy Rain, which if you played it, you know it wasn't that great. That all changed in April of 2012 when Telltale's The Walking Dead Season 1 was released on Steam, and it was a hit from the start. It was winning awards and selling big time. Being directly licensed with the ongoing TV show gave Telltale a platform for the game from the jump, so it was off to a good start. However, it's important to note that aside from a cameo appearance from Glenn, Telltale's The Walking Dead tells its own story with its own unique characters. It has no ties with the show or comics. All it takes from the comics is the setting. Now, with all of that laid out, let's give a brief summary of the plot. The game follows Lee Everett on his way to prison after killing a state senator who was sleeping with his wife. It's just his luck that on the way there a zombie apocalypse starts and the police cruiser that Lee is escorted in crashes on the side of the road. After escaping from the car and dealing with his first zombie, Lee meets a little girl named Clementine. Clementine is an 8-year-old girl who is being looked at by a babysitter after her parents left for a vacation. Her babysitter ended up dying and she hid in the treehouse until Lee came along. After they introduce each other, Lee promises Clementine that he will take care of her. This duo is easily the best part about The Walking Dead Season 1. Lee and Clementine are just so easy to root for. Lee is a genuine good person with a bad reputation, and Clem is an innocent young girl trapped in a horrible situation. It's so hard not to root for them from the jump. They are just two normal people trying to get by in the post-apocalypse, and as the game continues, their bond only grows stronger. This also complements the gameplay very well as you make choices with Clementine's opinion in mind. When making choices, you have to find the perfect balance of stone-cold survivor and father figure. Danny, of course, is the best example. I never ever killed Danny because Clementine literally screams in horror watching her father figure brutally murder a sick but defenseless man. It's very rare that another character's existence in a game impacts literally all the decisions you make, but that's exactly what Clementine does. The choices you make are in her best interest, and every time you're asked to do something considered wrong or immoral, you always ask yourself, would Clem look at me differently? That is good character writing, especially in some choice-based games where you almost want to be an anarchist just for fun. Clem does a good job at keeping you grounded, always taking the moral high road when times get tough. Speaking of characters, The Walking Dead has plenty of great characters to help push the narrative forward. You have Kenny, everyone's favorite boatmaster, Carly the crackshot reporter, Doug the awkward tech nerd, Krista and Omid who are the perfect breath of fresh air. All of these characters have their own personalities and bring something to Lee's group, and always have something to offer the story. Now, there is an exception here, and that's Katja and Duck. These two characters don't offer much to Lee's story at all. Aside from the occasional dialogue with Katja and Duck being friends with Clementine, they don't really do much to push the overall plot. They're mainly there to push Kenny's arc forward, which I'm honestly okay with because I love Kenny, but it would have been nice if Katja and Duck offered more to the overall story. The villains are also solid on The Walking Dead. The St. Johns are among the most memorable, and playing through episode 2 again was great as you could see all the subtle hints that the St. Johns are not exactly what they say they are. The Stranger is also great, however your experience with the Stranger all depends on if you stole from his car. He kidnaps Clementine no matter what, but it makes sense for him to come for revenge after you steal from him, and even within the group you have Larry, who specifically does not like Lee at all, considering he knows about Lee's murder trial and threatens to tell the group if Lee steps out of line. All of these characters help propel the plot forward, and they're always adding something to the story. Another thing that really helps these characters is the dialogue. I swear Telltale is easily top 5 at writing realistic dialogue between characters.
What if this was your daughter?
Never would have happened. She's not some snot-nosed toddler, okay? She's United States Air Force.
Fuck you and her.
The vocal performances are also spot on and do a great job of making these characters feel real and engaging the player with the plot even more, but even with all these interesting characters, Clementine is still the vocal point of the entire game. It's Lee and Clementine's relationship that makes The Walking Dead Season 1 such a memorable experience. The best moments in Season 1 are the moments that feature Clementine and Lee. Their dialogue and interactions with each other is just perfect. So with that summarized, I think it's time we look at the gameplay side of The Walking Dead, specifically how your choices impact the game, as well as other gameplay mechanics that enhance the experience. Gameplay in The Walking Dead is rather simple. A point-and-click style game where you can walk around, talk to characters, and interact with items to solve puzzles. It seems rather boring at times, and it certainly can be, but at least it's easy for anyone to pick up and play. There are puzzles in The Walking Dead as well, but they are very hit or miss. Some of these puzzles are actually very thought out and take some actual brain power to solve. However, some of them are pathetically easy, and some of them take literally under a minute to solve. There isn't any balance with the puzzles. And of course, you can select what Lee says in dialogue with other characters. And what makes The Walking Dead different from other games is when you select a certain dialogue option, you get a notification on the top left of the screen telling you whatever character you're talking to in that moment will remember what you said. While it seems really small to point out, this will become relevant with a point I'll make in the future, so keep that in mind. However, the real meat of the gameplay is the difficult decisions you make that impact the story. There are 5 major decisions per episode, and these choices are tracked by the game, and at the end of every episode, the game shows you all your decisions in contrast to the rest of the community. These decisions are either super hard or very easy. It all depends on how you play the game and what characters you like. Decisions that involve the lives or feelings of other characters are when these choices are at its strongest. There are decisions in this game where a character will truly hate you for the remainder of the game, and some choices where life is at stake and you have to think on your feet. However, with that in mind, it's time that we finally turn negative with this review. There's no creative way to say it, so I'll just say it. I find it so strange how people criticize future Telltale games, saying that your decisions don't matter, and how these games have fallen off since Season 1. The funny thing is, even in The Walking Dead Season 1, your choices never mattered. A phrase commonly referenced when talking about Telltale games is the illusion of choice. It's exactly as it sounds. The illusion of your choice is actually having significant impact when in reality your choices never really mattered. And this is something that Telltale has been repeatedly criticized for. However, those criticisms are thrown towards Season 2 and especially 3, but I almost never see these criticisms thrown towards Season 1 when the illusion of choice is just as strong here as it is with future Telltale games. Let's give a few examples. It doesn't matter if you steal from the stranger's car or not, he will always kidnap Clementine and will continue to have a burning hatred for Lee. At the end of episode 3, it doesn't matter if you save Krista or Omid, they will still board the train safely. You might think that Krista or Omid might dislike Lee's decision and end up hating him later on, kinda like with the meat locker scene, but that doesn't happen either. Even the final decision where you choose to shoot Lee or let him turn doesn't matter because he's dead either way. This isn't even a choice that impacts the story, it's a choice on if you're willing to traumatize an innocent girl more than she already is. To put it in its bluntest terms, because Season 1 was Telltale's first major hit on top of having such a fantastic story, the illusion of choice was much stronger with this game than other Telltale games. Now, to be fair to Telltale, the illusion of choice is in every choice-based story-driven game, even the best ones. Not every single decision you make will have a huge impact. However, with the Walking Dead games, do some simple research and you'll realize the vast majority of your decisions do not matter. Compared to other choice-based games, The Walking Dead is clearly a lot more railroaded than its counterparts, probably to keep the narrative moving forward without blemishes, but games like Until Dawn showed you can have an intriguing narrative while at the same time having difficult decisions that actually impact the story. Same with House of Ashes, or even Life is Strange to a certain extent. Every choice-based game to come after The Walking Dead Season 1 did the whole branching pathway and difficult decision part of choice-based video games way better than The Walking Dead Season 1. Or any other Telltale game for that matter. So, since your decisions do not matter in the grand scheme of the game, then why was The Walking Dead Season 1 so successful? Well, it's a few things, but one of the reasons is because Telltale early on mastered the illusion of choice. Remember those notification bubbles when a character remembers what you said? Every time a player sees that, they're leaving a mental note in their head, probably thinking, oh, I really hope that doesn't come back to bite me. Or when a character brings up a choice you made in the past and degrades Lee for it. All of it is an illusion. I've played through Season 1 maybe 5 times in my life, and I can confirm, your choices do not matter. And as the years went on and more choice-based games came out, Telltale's illusion of choice that was present in all their games started to fade, and the criticism started to pour in at around the same time The Walking Dead: A New Frontier was finished its final episode. Now, I just spent this segment criticizing Telltale, and I do think that criticism is warranted, but I don't want to start a Telltale hate train before I get to the main point. You see, despite everything I've said, I still think The Walking Dead Season 1 is a fantastic game. Maybe not for branching pathways or super difficult decisions, but I still think it's a good game, and that's because of the story. The story in The Walking Dead Season 1 is among the best I've ever experienced, maybe second only to Spec Ops: The Line. The relationship between Lee and Clementine is one of the best in video game history, and Telltale absolutely nailed their dialogue and interactions. It's when you look at the gameplay side, and specifically what future choice-based games would accomplish, that holds The Walking Dead back from true greatness. The best games of all time to me are the ones that are timeless, and The Walking Dead Season 1 just doesn't hold up well from a gameplay perspective when compared to the modern day choice-based game. It was a combination of being one of the first choice-based video games and having a truly amazing story that catapulted Telltale to heights they would never reach again. However, I truly don't think a game like Until Dawn would be as good if they didn't have a template for its development. That to me is what The Walking Dead Season 1 is, a foundational piece for one of my favorite subgenres, something that kicked off an entire line of video games and brought it to new heights. The Walking Dead Season 1 obviously isn't perfect, but what it did for an entire subgenre should be respected. Despite all my criticisms, I still think it's a worthwhile experience, and while it has flaws that cannot be ignored, what it did for the future of video games should not be ignored either.